and welcome to episode 14 of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors, and I am your host, Alba Arango. Today's episode, we are going to talk about the first page. And what I mean by that is things that you do want to do in the first page of your book and things you don't want to do in your first page. And let me kind of give you some background on this. So I've attended maybe 25 different writers' conferences in my life. And at all of them, they always have a session that's called the first page read. And what they do is they have a panel, and it's comprised of either all agents or agents and publishers. And what they do is they read the first page of a manuscript and they ask the panel to raise their hand when and if they would stop reading. And what happens is in attending these sessions, which by the way, I highly recommend, in attending these sessions, you get to see what agents and publishers want to see and what absolutely turns them off. So what I've done is I've compiled a short list of things that agents do want to see on the first page and things they don't. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Alrighty then. This episode will be in two parts as always. In the first part, I'll talk about some things that you really should include in that first page. And then we'll get to the second part where I will talk about things that agents have said pretty much at every conference I've been to, things they do not want to see on that first page. So let's get to it. What should you have on that first page? And by the way, if you are just starting off on your book, you really don't need to worry about this quite yet. The priority when you're first writing your book is to get the book done. Don't worry about the first page. Your first page that you wrote probably won't even be the first page when it's all said and done and you go back and revise and edit. So don't worry about that now. It's when you get towards the end and you're ready to start putting the book together for actually querying or thinking of self-publishing. When you get to that stage, that's when you really want to focus on that first page, because that first page is what's going to sell this book to either an agent publisher or sell it to a reader if they go to Amazon and they look at the first page. So that first page needs to knock it out of the park. So what things do you need to have on that first page? All right, let's start with the first, which is probably the most important, and that is your opening line, the hook. That opening line can deter or intrigue a reader. And you definitely want the latter. You want the reader to see that first line and go, ooh, what is this about? That is such a cool opening line. Now, that's not an easy thing to do, to get that hook and what is going to draw the reader in. So here's some recommendations. Go to like Barnes & Noble and go to your specific genre. And I do think you really do need to go to your specific genre to read the opening lines of what books that are selling are like. What are these opening lines like? And be careful, again, you do want to be, genre specific. I mean, because you might have a really cool opening line like, Jenny glanced at all the blood on the floor and sighed. That's kind of a cool opening line, but it would be good for like a mystery or like a thriller, but maybe not so good for like a romance or like a how to put furniture together book. Yeah, that might not be what you want for the opening line for that. So you definitely want to kind of think of your genre and go to that section of Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore and just kind of thumb through the first lines of a bunch of different books just to kind of get a feel for like how authors are looking at trying to hook the reader. So that's one thing. You definitely want a hook for that opening line. But there's a couple more things that agents and publishers have said in these panels. And one is they like to see the protagonist on the first page. They don't, it doesn't have to be like an action scene, but they want to be introduced to who this book is centered on, like whose point of view is it going to be through. And if you have more than one protagonist, then that's okay too, but at least one of them should be on that front page. Or if you wanted to start it with like the antagonist, that would be kind of a cool draw too, to have that opening first page and have your antagonist be the one that is centered in that first page. But you definitely want to have whoever your main character is, or one of the main characters needs to be on that front page. And there should be a sort of, and this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, a sort of hint as to like what the book is going to be about. Now that's a lot to have in just the opening page, right? To have something about the protagonist, sort of a hint as to what the book is going to be about. And it could be a really, really subtle hint, like maybe they have an uneasy feeling or something like that, but something that you know something's going to happen. All right. Something's going to happen in this book to this person that's on the front page. Those are things you do want to have on the front page, but what I have seen a lot more often at these conferences and at these panels is what you do not want to have, what agents and publishers don't want to see in that opening first page. So before I get to that, it's time for the crazy law / writing prompt. Now, every week I give a crazy law, and this is a law that once upon a time was a real law in history. And my writing challenge to you is to come up with the story as to what could possibly have happened that they needed to make this a law. And today's is kind of a strange one. So let's see what you guys can do with this. Here we go. In Norfolk, Virginia, it is against the law for hens to lay eggs before 8 a.m. and after 4 p.m. Okay, that to me is like the weirdest law ever. So I kind of would like to see a creative story as to why that became a law, or I might want to see as maybe a creative of how you on earth you would enforce that. But anyways, that is your writing challenge for this week. So let's go ahead and get to things agents and publishers don't want to see on that first page. So here we go. I think in every single conference I've been to, there has been at least one author who submitted a first page read, and it starts off with them waking up. And I will tell you right now, if that happens, immediately almost every hand goes up. Agents and publishers do not want page 1 to be somebody waking up from a dream or waking up from a coma. So if that is going to be a part of your book, you're going to have to find a really creative way to get that in. I'm just telling you what I hear. These agents and publishers don't want that on page 1. So that's going to have to be somewhere later on. Maybe it can be a scene that's, foreshadowing. I don't know. I'm just letting you know they do not like to see it. Another thing they don't like to see is page 1, someone looking in a mirror. And this comes up pretty frequently as well, especially when authors are trying to give character description of their character. And so they have them standing in a mirror, looking at their reflection, talking about what they see. Oh, they just do not like that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and if you're an agent or publisher out there, you can certainly, talk about this in the comments, but they don't actually like to see that at all in the book, not even just page 1. They don't like that to be the way you use to describe your protagonist, is them looking in a mirror and talking about what they see. So kind of, come up with more creative ways to get your character descriptions out there, but that's just telling you this agents and publishers do not want to see someone looking in a mirror on page 1 or probably in the rest of the book either. Okay, another thing that comes up at every conference. There's too much description or exposition on page 1. If you're spending an entire paragraph describing the setting or the scene, you've already lost your reader. Page 1 is valuable real estate. Really needs to be an essence of what the book is about, not just, what the dining room looks like that they're sitting in. It needs to be everything about getting that reader hooked on wanting to turn to page 2. And too much exposition, too much description, too many details on page 1 bogs the reading down. So think about that as you are writing your page 1. All right. Again, finish the book first. When you go back to revise, that's when you want to pay attention to what exact words you are using on page 1. It's like every word on page 1 needs to be important to getting that reader hooked into your story. And one last thing that I've just seen come kind of over and over again is the overuse of the cliched protagonist. And what I mean by that is your protagonist is a total cliche that is evident in page 1. They're the bitter divorcee, like, oh, she hates her ex-husband, blah, blah, blah. Or he's an ex-cop and he's bitter and he's an alcoholic. These are just cliched to death. Or even like the nerd who doesn't fit in but wants to. I mean, all of these are okay to have in your book. Just on page 1, there needs to be something new and fresh. Okay, so think outside the box for your characters, especially if you're bringing them in on page 1, which you want to do for your protagonist. Somehow bring them in so where that's not just a slap in the face for the reader to be like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. What is going to make this book any different? So there you go, a bunch of things they don't want to see and things they do want to see. So when you are getting ready to submit your work to an agent or publisher, that first page is a valuable tool and you want to make that tool work for you. So think of ways that you can put your protagonist in an interesting situation on page 1. Don't just write them, a boring scene about breakfast and then, but it gets really good in page 2. They may not make it to page 2. So think about exactly what you want your reader to see on page 1 and make it something unique, make it something intriguing, something that makes your reader want to turn to page 2. There you go. That's it for today. If you have any suggestions or if you're an agent or publisher and you want to put your comments down, please, please, please do. I will do anything to help, writers get an insight into what the agencies, what the industry is looking for. So if you enjoyed this, please be sure to hit like and subscribe. And I do a new podcast episode every Wednesday. So, stay tuned next week for a new episode of Book Writing Tips, quick tips for new and seasoned authors. Love you all. Have a great week.